Hey y'all, welcome back to Breaking Firewalls and Glass Ceilings, the podcast where we talk about the systems where we're expected to survive and the ones we're building instead. I'm Tiffany, and this is episode 404, Support Not Found at NJIT. Let me just say this up front, leaving NJIT wasn't the end of my story. It was a redirection, not a failure. Just because one program or place doesn't support you or doesn't give you what you need to thrive doesn't mean your dreams are expiring. It doesn't mean your dreams can't come true. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from what's not working and bet on yourself that you'll find what will work. In this episode, I'm pulling back the curtain on my time in NJIT's computer science program, what drew me in, what pushed me out, and how I realized the problem wasn't me, it was everything else. It was that I could not connect with the material, and the system running the material was not there to support me. We'll talk about being one of the few women in the room, the lack of real support, and the pressure to just quote-unquote figure it out in silence. And I'll share how one very unexpected surprise, my first pregnancy, ended up shifting everything in the best way, because sometimes what feels like a detour is really just the beginning of your real story. Before I set foot into NJIT, I already had an associate's degree in engineering, but that path really never fit. It felt like I was constantly forcing myself to enjoy it, like trying to break in a pair of shoes that never actually belonged to me. I finished it, sure, but by the end I knew deep down that it wasn't what I wanted to build my life around. I didn't like the hardware concept. I didn't enjoy physics. I didn't enjoy electricity, watts, statics. I didn't enjoy any of that. During this time, life was always difficult and heavy. I was either relying on my mother for financial help, or she was relying on me 100% while I tried to make my dreams come true. Towards the end of my journey of living with my mother is when the NJIT journey was beginning. I started the NJIT journey when I was moving in with my boyfriend, who was only an hour away from NJIT. I feel like the final push to go back to school, because I was very unsure of what I wanted to do, and my time getting my associate's degree wasn't fun, so pushing it off as long as I could. I think that trying to rely on my mother financially really pushed me to a place of being scared to ever do that again. So I felt like I needed to go back to school and finalize a degree that would be a good choice for me, but also very smart in today's society. Technology has always been a passion of mine, and it is a smart go-to with the future, and I understood that. I decided to go back to school, and I picked computer science, honestly on a whim. I liked coding sometimes. I didn't hate it, but that was enough. I cranked out my acceptance essay in 30 minutes, and before I knew it, boom, I was accepted. I remember thinking, okay, this is it. I was actually really good at coding. It came easier to me than all the circuits and the wiring of engineering ever had, and I could tell that the people around me were struggling with concepts that were quite easy for me. So I felt like, yeah, like I'm definitely in the right spot. I figured if I hated the hardware side of things, then the software side was definitely where I would thrive. Why did I pick NJIT? Well, everyone always talks about MIT is like a gold standard in technology, so I thought the New Jersey version must be like the East Coast cousin of MIT. A solid program, a big name, something that sounds serious. I wanted to be taken seriously for one of the first times of my life. So let me paint this picture for you. I was driving an hour each way to take night classes in Newark, New Jersey. And if you know Newark at night, especially for women, it's not exactly what I'd call safe or scenic. I was pulling into that campus parking lot, looking over my shoulder every time, wondering why I never had pepper spray. I wasn't your typical student there either. I was far older, and I was commuting. Most of them, at least 90% of them were not commuting, and they were living on campus. Most people around me, they didn't understand why I would ever commute an hour for a school, but for a technology school like NJIT, I didn't understand how you didn't understand why I would go all the way here. for my future, for the money, for the degree, to say, oh, I got my degree at NJIT. What's confusing? I thought I could feel the side eye, like, what is she doing here vibe. They could tell I was older and they could tell I was different. Still, I believed in the fairy tale and I thought this was it. I'd get the degree, I'd land the dream job right off in the computer science sunset, happily ever after with my husband. And I could finally afford a home in New Jersey. And spoiler alert, it did not go that way. First red flags, the boredom of coding and the other gut checks. Here's the wild part. I actually liked NJIT at first. The campus was beautiful, the staff were helpful, and most of the professors, male and female, were incredibly considerate and supportive. I wasn't met with hostility, not right away. One of my female professors was especially kind. I'll never forget when she said, wait, you drive an hour here every night? Like, she was genuinely stunned I was making that type of commitment for a school. But being dedicated and being in the right place is not the same thing. It didn't take long for the boredom to set in. I was sitting in class staring at code or some other prerequisite class and just dragging, never feeling committed with the material, never feeling like it was right. I kept hoping that spark would show up. It never did. I was great at the assignments. I passed all my tests, but nothing about the work pulled me in. It felt dry, repetitive, and honestly, soul-sucking. And while I was internally screaming at how boring it was, everyone else was hyped, debating compilers, arguing, and I was just trying to figure out if any job in computer science didn't require staring at code 80% of the day. To make things harder, I wasn't just a woman in tech. I was an older woman in tech. Most of the students were fresh out of high school. I was in my 30s, married, driving an hour to and fro every night after my full-time job. I was never pulling all-nighters because that just wasn't in the cards for me. But these were young adults that had the ability to study for as long as they wanted during the day, whenever they had the ability. I had less time to study, so it was always a feeling of playing catch up to keep up with the whippersnappers. There were moments in that experience where it felt like being a woman made the experience double as hard. There was one time in the same professor's class that was kind to me about my drive. There was a young guy, maybe 18 or 19, straight up disrespectful to her during every class, loud, inappropriate, and just a mouthy little jerk. You know, she had to stay professional. She would try to redirect him, but I could see it that her hands were tied, so I did what I had to do and loudly stood up in front of the class and demanded that he respect our professor and let me learn or get out. If there wasn't a moment that I felt like a geezer or a boomer, that was it. But she was thankful and he shut up finally. So it was a great moment for me. That moment is definitely burned into my brain because I will always be the woman who stands up for other women, especially when the room is full of men who won't. So yeah, there were kind people, great professors, but the program itself, the age gap, the constant coding, the energy of the students around me, it was all starting to pile up. You could say it was compiling up. I couldn't figure out what job I was even working towards. Everything I researched sounded so dull, robotic, all code, no creativity. I was slowly realizing the worst case scenario. I had chosen the wrong major again. Now let's talk about being a woman in a technology school in your 30s, surrounded by teenage boys. I felt like the awkward aunt at a frat party. I didn't speak their language. They didn't even speak to me. And I didn't care about gaming. And they all definitely weren't trying to include me in their group chats or study groups. It wasn't just isolating, it made me question everything. Like maybe I was too old or maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Came the slow burn of realizing that I didn't even like what I was studying. Every semester, I took out more loans, more classes, more stress, and for what? I was sitting there thinking, like, is this really it? Am I going to be staring at code for the rest of my life? Is it worth being able to finally afford a home with my husband, to do something that I hate every day? I was acing my classes. Like, that wasn't a concern. I was definitely capable of this material, but I was miserable. I just couldn't connect with it. I didn't feel anything towards it. And I knew deep down this wasn't my path. Let me tell you about the moment where it all fell apart. I was in a JavaScript class, and the professor was explaining something about base 8 or base 10, and I had never heard of that concept before. Literally, while he's walking around the room, I'm trying to Google to rapidly understand this. And I guess it was so much of a term that he felt it was ridiculous that I didn't understand, that he wasn't able to even deem me with any type of help or assistance. His response: I hope you can figure it out in front of the entire class. Like, you didn't even need to come up to me in the first place. I didn't call you to come over to humiliate me. Of course I was humiliated. And what made it worse, I didn't even know yet. I was newly pregnant, and that's why my brain was acting so weird, and it wasn't acting the same way that it typically would when I was trying to learn a new concept, especially on the fly. That's where I thrive. But I didn't even know that honeymoon in the Dominican Republic brought me a baby. So my brain not firing at all cylinders any longer. What I thought was burnout was actually pregnancy brain. And that added fog only made things harder. Within a week, I dropped that class. And then within another week, I had dropped my other class. The entire semester was dropped. And after I had my son, I never went back to NJIT. Oh, did I mention I was working a full-time job during all of this? You know, my boss was definitely a male narcissist that I worked for. He was a good boss because he brought me good experience and good knowledge and great stuff on my resume. He took me out of the restaurant business and put me in an office setting, and that really led to my future, I feel like, and I'm super grateful for that. But he made every part of that process hard. I feel like the boss can either make or break the job. Either the boss can be amazing and you can want to go to your job every day because you like doing your job and you like being around them, or the boss can make things double as difficult and you never want to be there and the job is harder. So why would you want to do that? Why would you enjoy that? This boss was absolutely boss number 2. He always thought he was helpful too, and the whole crew really enjoyed spending time with him, but no, sir, come on. He was very disrespectful of the women that worked there. He would try to hit on some of the younger girls. It was gross. It was hard to watch, especially since I knew him personally. I got linked up with him, and I'm no, I'm not about that. No. My boss, of course, he knew what it was like to go back to school. He was a software engineer, so he knew what it was like. And I know that's why he was anti go back to school, because it would hinder his business, because that's the only thing that mattered to him, not the people that worked for him, not their lives. That wasn't important. He could pretend it was important. He was good at that, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered over the business. So when I was struggling because I took 2 summer classes and didn't know it was more than double the work to take a summer class while working at least 40 hours a week job, and started to get sick from it. First it was mental, and then when mental wasn't dealt with because I didn't have time to do anything extra, then it turned physical, and he still had very little compassion for me, which was insane because I helped his business thrive. I took his customer service department from nothing to amazing. Not nothing to something, nothing to amazing and thriving. If he was still open, I'm sure he would still use templates I made and do processes that I made, but that's another story. I was drowning emotionally, physically, financially. There was nothing the boss was willing to do extra for me, and that's when I knew it was over with NJIT, and it was time to walk away and figure out what's next for me. I wish technology-focused schools like NJIT actually used technology to support students with full-time jobs or commutes. I get that some classes need labs and you need to be there in person, but you could definitely teach JavaScript online. And honestly, I would have thrived from learning from literally anyone but that professor. Despite it all, I had straight A's, so I was fully capable of slaying that degree, but I hated it, just so we all understand. There's one thing I've learned, it's that schools and professors have way more power than they think. They can choose to either use that power to inspire someone to rise or make them feel so small they walk away. Cough, cough. Leaving NJIT was the best thing I did at that point in my life, but that's not the point. The point is your environment matters, support matters. And if you're in a space that drains you more than it builds you, you're allowed to walk away. Your value isn't defined by a toxic classroom, a single semester, or a prestigious name. And NJIT, here's my message. Do better. Students deserve it. That's it for this episode of Breaking Firewalls and Glass Ceilings. If you've ever walked away from something that wasn't right for you, even if everyone else said it was, know that I see you and I'm proud of you. I'll catch you on the next one.